Welcome, everyone. We are just about to get started. So glad to see you all here for our event. Okay, great. Still letting folks in through the waiting room, but let me jump in and get us started. So I'm Amy Antonucci, and I'm a board member for New Hampshire Peace Action, and really pleased to welcome you to our Peace and Justice Conversation on Monday, March 23rd, 2026. We're really excited to welcome Dr. Simone Chun to discuss Korea's fight for sovereignty tonight. Let me say a few things before I turn it over to her. If you are new to our organization, New Hampshire Peace Action has been organizing, mobilizing, and educating people for over 40 years in New Hampshire on the values of peace and justice and the idea that a world built on cooperation instead of competition and conflict will be better for everyone. We like to also acknowledge that we are doing our work here in New Hampshire on the traditional ancestral homeland of the Abenaki, Wabanaki, and Pennacook peoples, past and present. And we honor the land and the people who lived in good relations for so many generations. Just a real quick reminder, we are happy to have your video on so we can see you. We will keep everyone's audio muted. To start with, the chat will be open for you to put in questions throughout, although we will be saving them until we get to, until after Simone has spoken. But I also, when we get to that point, we'll take hand raising and you'll be able to ask your question specifically if you want to. Let's see, what else do I want to tell you about? That's pretty much it. Let's see, sorry, my email just went, or my computer just did a few weird things, so I'm a little thrown off, but I'm getting back on track here, folks. So let me just quickly say a few words about our speaker before I turn it over to her. Dr. Chun is a researcher and activist who specializes in inter-Korean relations and U.S. foreign policy on the Korean Peninsula. She serves on the board of directors of the Korea Policy Institute and on the advisory board of Code Pink. She has held academic positions at Suffolk University, Northeastern University, and was affiliated with Harvard University's Korea Institute. She's done a lot of writing for a lot of great publications such as Foreign Policy in Focus, Common Dreams, and Truth Out. And we're just really pleased to have her with us. I'll be putting some links to her work in the chat as we go along, but for now, I just want to turn it over to her so we can get started. And please join me in a visible welcome as I turn it over to her. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you so much for inviting me for this important forum, and I'm so honored. And what I wanted to begin, I want to start with this very simple and urgent claim that is, South Korea is increasingly being transformed into a forward military outpost within US strategy toward China. So with this theme, I have a prepared slide. So let me share with the slides before I start my talk. So let's share. Let me know if my slide has been shared.
We can see it. You still need to change the view so that it's all that we see,
Okay.
like we did before. I think it's under, yeah, that's where, yep.
Let me move this. How does
Uh,
that look?
It says loading, but I think, yeah, there you go. Perfect.
Here we go.
Great.
Thank you. I'm going to put this one move. Okay, so here we go. So the title of my talk is This Land is Not a US War Base, a people-led struggle for Korea's sovereignty. And as I mentioned in the very beginning, I want to start with this, the most important message, that is South Korea is increasingly being framed as a forward military outpost for US strategy. And this is also is a regional network that is part of a broader Indo-Pacific system that has that is based on the US alliances and its allies. And in fact, the commander, it is South Korea is being served as also quasi-commander center. And the main US Indo-Pacific command is in Hawaii, from which it coordinates all the power across the region. And this is South Korea is being served. The purpose is integrated structure that aimed at maintaining US hegemonic dominance. It is not, although authorities will say this is defense, but it is primarily, in my view, serve as a dominance. Now, as a result, South Korea is, one way to look at South Korea is, although it is obviously it's a, it's a sovereign country, but if you look at in detail, as I will also look at the history background, the issue is whether it is still occupied nation that still search for, seek, pursue to obtain complete sovereignty. One, there are several issues. As a result of being part of US hegemonic domination, the system, it is expanding. US military role has been expanding. It is, for instance, as a part of being integrated to Indo-Pacific strategy. For the last 2 or 3 years in South Korea, US-led South Korea joint military exercises have been held pretty much around the clock, almost 300 plus days. Moreover, now it is increasingly, it is the nuclear and operational integration is also part of that US-led South Korea joint military exercises. So the question is, does this US Indo-Pacific strategy, South Korea's integration into this strategy, does it ensure stability and security in South Korea and also the region, or does it increase the risk or conflict that are tied to U.S. war against China? So that is the key issue that I wanted to explore, and therefore the question that I want to raise is South Korea will South Korea serve forward base for U.S. war against China, or will South Korea develop into taking more independent path? So that is the question that I want us to think about tonight. So in other words, occupied nation or obtaining complete sovereignty. Here, I want to also think about apply a concept that developed by international relations scholars. This notion is developed referring to increasingly very predatory activities of US hegemon that seeks maximum gain, even at the expense of US allies, that undermines security and stability, and also having nefarious long-term influence. So therefore, looking at this, what we call the predatory hegemon, that is example being United States in particular, as opposed to previously the benevolent hegemon. A lot of people feel have the sense of powerlessness. Not only the weaker and middle power states do not feel that they can challenge this predatory hegemon, such as the United States. Even people within the United States feel there's sort of a widespread kind of sense that ordinary people cannot possibly shape global outcomes, and change does require more visible, successful people-led struggles. So here I wanted to think about Korea as an example. In fact, it might be even a successful, inspiring people-led struggle against a predatory hegemon. For instance, South Korea, as you know, have had a very history of being under U.S. domination, including starting from all the way from Korean War, through massive U.S. bombing, and also currently, moving forward, currently serving as a forward-based strategy, U.S. strategy against China. So this is why I want to think about why Korea is not only important for the region itself, but also globally. And also Korea's, looking at Korea's case, it matters globally because it's precisely what's happening right now in the Middle East with ongoing war against China. And most importantly, also, looking at the staggering humanitarian cost of the exercise of a predatory hegemonic power. So at the end, again, the alternative, we're looking at the alternative, how can we have a different path? For that, I want to argue that we need a people-led movement that can challenge war, that can challenge this predatory hegemon, that can challenge empire, that can challenge militarism. So having said that, I said Korea case can offer some interesting examples. So I want to give you tonight like 5 specific struggles based in Korea. Those are, the first one is 661 South Korea's civic organizations that mobilized within just 5 days against U.S.-Israel illegal war. And then the second case that I wanted to briefly look at is the probably case that probably you might be more informed about, Gangjeong village in Jeju in South Korea, that against naval base that can host U.S. nuclear powered strikers, destroyers, and carriers as a part of Pivot to Asia. That struggle has been going on. It's unbelievable. It's about 19 years. And third specific case that I want to briefly survey is the sad Soseongni Seongju in South Korea, a struggle against deployment of U.S. THAAD. That has also, as I mentioned, it's about for 9-year struggle. So as you can see already, these are some of the very persistent, enduring, people-led struggle resistance against U.S. imperialism. And fourth one I want to look at briefly is also Korean labor movement, which also part of challenging U.S. imperialist policies that harm working class interest. And last one, most recent one, is Revolution of Light. That is the mass movement that stopped South Korea's illegal martial law, and also to defend democracy, and also not only that, to also stop possibly any military conflict. So the key insight that I want to get here is that, again, as you can see, all these, at least there's, there are many other struggles, but based on these 5 specific cases, what I want to think about is Korea as a sort of front line of a people-led resistance to militarism and against predatory hegemon. Now, the first case, about 5, I mentioned that we didn't just, with the outbreak of US-Israel illegal war attack on Iran, within 5 days in South Korea, there's massive 661 organizations joined, and in response against Trump's urge, urging South Korea to deploy forces to the Strait of Hormuz. And it was a broad coalition that includes students, labor groups, progressive parties, progressive groups, peace groups. All those 661 organizations joined. And their core demands is reject troop deployment and oppose illegal war and defend Korean sovereignty. And then they tried to expose this is not just about whether we agree or disagree with this deployment of Korean troops to the Middle East. It is also about broader questions such as sovereignty, maintaining sovereignty versus, capitulating to a Trump's alliance pressure. It is also about human security as opposed to following war logic. It is also about defending democracy as opposed to externally driven militarization. So in other words, again, even the ongoing Koreans mobilizing against this US-Israeli war, it is also, but not only just objecting to this militaristic policy, but it's also about broader struggles, such as the national struggle over Korea's role defending Korea's sovereignty and the ability to think about the ability of people to challenge that militarization and also be able to shape foreign policy. So to give a little bit of update on the ongoing US-Israeli war, I think probably some of you are more informed of that than I am. So as I am not really focusing on the war per se, but still I think it's important to look at the context. That is, as we know, Israel is playing a central role in this unprovoked and illegal aggression, serving as operational hub and escalating, playing escalating role. And also obviously Iran is responding, and not only Iran, it seems to me that it's responding to the attack, but also increasingly seems to contest the US regional presence and not only also confront Israel as a key forward US base. So in this case, if Israel and South Korea, the Korea has kind of interestingly similar position. Israel served as a key forward US military base. South Korea serving as also key forward US military base. But what I'm arguing is that at the moment, South Korea is taking very dramatically different role after we stopped the far-right president Yoon Suk-yeol's and also the illegal martial law 2024, and also having new election 2025, electing new progressive president. South Korea is taking totally the opposite path. That is more a path of peace, path of cooperation, path of more progressive peace, whereas Israel is completely the opposite, is going into very obviously, as we are looking at right now in front of our eyes, illegal attack. So this is where I want to think about how the two US forward base playing very different role. And my argument is that because of in this case of South Korea, people have been, there's incredible mobilization, people have struggled, which has been going on for decades, which also stopped every single opportunity that we get. We're able to stop that militaristic policy. Now, so let me take a look at how South Koreans are doing right now, how mobilizing specifically to resist, not only to resist that illegal war, but also to address broader questions. So these are some of the images. If you look at, as you know, those elementary students who were, 171 elementary students who were killed by Israeli US missiles. And this was actually, the picture is from one of the protests in South Korea. It's a young Korean woman who is holding this quarantine children who were killed, and showing that it is not only, the point that I want to make, show is not only Koreans against, again, the the participating in the illegal war, but also the defend their sovereignty, but also looking at addressing this moral issue, right? Looking at humanitarian consequences, and um, and this is again probably you'll probably have seen too many unfortunately photos like this. This is mass graves of those children, and I asked the Farsi, the bottom is saying lilies grow out of blood of children, and I think that this really it's truly heartbreaking. And at this moment, as I mentioned earlier, though in the beginning, still despite all this ongoing humanitarian horrible consequences, I think there's a sense of some of still feel that it's like helplessness, which I think I as I mentioned wanted to address. And Korean people have mobilized. They immediately, as I pointed out, 661 organization made mobilized. This is they're saying this is the nationwide opposition against the illegal war. We oppose deployment of Korean troops. So this one you might be wondering, what is this? This is a 661. I did a screenshot of this to look at who are these groups. If you look at these groups, those who know Koreans, you may find it quite interesting. They are so diverse. It's one of the most diverse group of people, organizations who had been leading mass mobilization and also democratization, anti-imperialistic movement for decades, right? So they're now mobilizing and to oppose this illegal war. And if you look at some of these, I was looking at each organization, and there are a lot of labor unions, and also peace groups. So in other words, what you can see, and also there's let's say regional regional organization seeking justice, etc. So I think what makes Korea very different and also very inspiring is that these organizations are almost serve as sort of a permanent standing army of a people. So if any issue, any important issue arises, you have very quick mobilization of these groups. They already have well networked and they're ready to go. So that's why Korea's case is very important, because a lot of time when we look at, even in the United States, there are some, there's a Black Lives Matter movement, and somehow the movement rises and then it's kind of vanish. But in South Korea, these organizations, they're constantly they're networking, they're developing their solidarity. So their movement is very strong. So this is again some of those images from the protest. And another one that I want to also add to my talk is that Koreans have there's a lot of religious group. This is the Buddhist monks who are against the war, right? This full frustration, and then they prostrating, saying that that stop war, stop killing. With the humility, we need to stop, right? In other words, this adds kind of moral, ethical component of the movement. And additionally, these are political parties. It's a lawmakers. He is the major a member of a National Assembly. So you have all these diverse civic groups, and there are also the labor unions, workers union, and also there's a political parties, law members who are actually serving in National Assembly. So that makes the movement very powerful. It's not just just few peace groups doing things. It has more tangible possibility. This is a progressive party. A lot of the progressive parties members holding their protest. This is a Protestant religious group who are holding nightly vigil in a very historic Korea's temple. And it's in front of a US embassy. they're holding every day. They're having protest, saying that we don't want, we oppose the deployment of Korean troops to the Middle East, and oppose illegal war. And so as you can see, you get to see that not only are they diverse, they also very, it's not just the civic groups, but also it's the political parties involved, the lawmakers, and so it make the movement more durable, more powerful. Therefore, Koreans have about 60% of Koreans, more than 60%, they oppose the war. They oppose deployment of war. So in other words, that actually you can see that make a impact on the public opinion, and also hopefully also influence the government's policy. One thing they also probably as a part of Korea's involvement in the ongoing war is that, as you know, United States have placed the THAAD missile defense system in South Korea, in this very tiny rural region. And during this war, United States just moved part of those THAAD missile defense system to the Middle East, which already you can already see that already Koreans are not directly involved. As you can see, this is a showcase that shows that simply because Korea is a part of U.S. Missile defense system, or very directly integrated into U.S. military, it's already South Korea is being indirectly involved in the current war. And then I'll skip some, and you can see there again, show the sheer power of the Koreans protests that are just happening now. So that is, I wanted to start with this, what's happening right now, because this is very relevant, and it's also important to address the current event. But to understand what's happening right now, because I started the premise with the Korea being part of U.S. hegemonic system and being under military occupation, we have to look at some of the historical background. Probably I will just go very quickly. Korea, has been liberated in 1945 after World War II, and immediately what happened you see here is the United States start as its military rule, not only from all the way to the from the beginning, and also from even after during post-war period. Korea is under U.S. military rule with specific two framework, that is a mutual defense treaty and also other United Nations related forces. And therefore there's about 28,500 US forces and stationed in South Korea. Therefore, if you look at it, throughout not only from 1945 and all the Cold War and also post-Cold War, U.S. bases is becoming, right? It's becoming not only serving as the front, South Korea serving as a front post, but it's increasingly now, as I mentioned earlier, to transform into new hegemonic strategies by the United States. And the most latest form is 2006. That is under the banner of a strategic flexibility. Now, U.S. forces Korea is serving to contain China. And as U.S. commander of a USFK, metaphor suggests, that is Korea is an aircraft carrier to advance U.S. military hegemony. To look at where they are, American bases are, these are, you can see, probably some of you are familiar with all these different American military bases. And in other words, the complete South Korea southern part is pretty much, it's all, with the host numerous US bases. And this is probably the Korean letters, probably you're not familiar with. Another, this is showing all these US bases, and also this image shows US part of the west part of South Korea as being it's part of now, it's a US missile defense system. So now to looking at the South Korea, one way to look at it is, oh, it's a beautiful country, and BTS just had the yesterday had a live comeback concert or not. But the other way to look at Korea is, as you can see, this is an occupied nation. So let me skip some of these slide, and then therefore, to maintain those US bases, the next one is obviously South Korea being one of the top importers of US weapons. This is somewhat outdated. It's 2018. South Korea was the third largest importer of US weapons, but recently now it's about, for the last 5 years or so, it's about seventh. The latest one is seventh largest importer of US weapons, which still means it's a it's a big importer. Nevertheless, as I mentioned, people have resisted. There is ongoing local resistance against militarization, not only from people, the largest U.S. military base, Pyeongtaek, to THAAD, the home of THAAD, U.S. THAAD system in Sungju. There is all these residents have been protesting and resisting against U.S. militarization for years. And those, some of the struggles have been successful, whereas others not. And one thing that really also mobilized people's struggle is that the crimes committed by US forces, and also that exposed the consequences. There's land seizures, the crimes, noise and pollution issue. The famous one of the earliest case that actually started Korea's, let's see, anti-US based movement, or Korea's, it's a movement for sovereignty. In 1992, a young woman who was murdered by US soldier, and brutally murdered, and soldiers not being able to try to punish by the South Korean law, that sparked nationwide protest. And also there is 2002 middle school girls were killed by US armored vehicle, which also led massive protest. And also the US, building of one of the largest US military bases outside the United States in Pyeongtaek, which led 925 days of protest. Eventually, of course, it wasn't successful. But another way, it also shows this ongoing struggle by the residents against all this U.S. military bases. This is the young woman that I talked about, 1991, Yugami, who was murdered by the U.S. Military personnel. And this is those young girls, 2 middle school girls who were killed by U.S. armored vehicles, and which led to the massive movement against U.S. military base, and also the South Korea's kind of raising awareness for the lack of sovereignty Koreans have, and so it's an important case. Now, moving on, I wanted to, having looked at some of those the details of U.S. bases, and also the consequences, and also local resistance, I also wanted to look at the other side, that is, what make people, the residents in these places, continue their resistance. I think part of it also is about the Korea's being the importance of this ethical resistance. For instance, not only economic, political, and also social issue, there's also deeply rooted the sort of tradition and idea, sense of for ethical issues. A lot of them. So in this case, the faith-based groups have an important role to play. So for instance, in Jeju, Gangjong village, you go there, their daily Catholic mass, peace vigil, daily. They lament, they condemn the South Korean government and US building, militarizing this beautiful island. It's called Island of Peace, that is being transformed to now becoming war base. In the Seoul Summit that I mentioned, where US said that is placed, those people who have been part of the movement has been no other than elderly called the grandmothers. They leading daily nonviolent resistance, doing the roadblocks, the prayer, continuous presence, and also Korean labor movement that has for instance, Korean Confederation Trade Union, KCTU, that have not only are they addressing workers' issue, but they think they address the U.S. militarism, U.S. imperialism that harms workers' interests. And also the candlelight movement, the one that I mentioned, also Revolution of Light. It is also not only are they against the let's say political authoritarianism or illegal martial law, but they also is part of practicing this collective rituals of a collective consciousness that shows that that addresses the ethical issue. So key takeaway that I want to point out is that how this, in addition to all the other political economic issues, it also about there in Korea this deeply rooted this ethical concern, nonviolent, persistent collective practice for sovereignty is making Korea's case very, I think, enduring and also important. So I will just show some of those slides, and then I will leave. I'll end, and then I'll leave for time for discussion. And as I mentioned earlier about Jeju, the Gangjang villages, 19 years of resistance against the naval base. Imagine the movement is really they last for 19 years. That means it's enduring, it's durable, and they are actually now serving as one of the leader of peace movement, right? Because of their enduring presence. So for this, again, addressing the latest issue, this is their, they came out against the U.S.-Israeli war and shut down as part of their promoting their Jeju against the Jeju naval base. They also wanted to give a solidarity to international movement against the illegal war. So as I mentioned about the, in addition to doing the other organization, this is about the presence of a Catholic priest and daily resistance prayers. This is the street. This is also their daily presence, the street mass they're engaging. This is the one that I mentioned about the grandmothers, elderly women leading, the protest against that. This is more. So let me pause here. I have a couple other more slides, but let me pause here, and then probably I can stop here. And to kind of make a key point, that is Korea is being transformed into a forward military outpost within U.S. strategy toward China. However, because of Korea's a strong tradition and also a practice of people-led struggle, Koreans have been their struggle have been quite effective, and also some of those characteristics of a Korean struggle, I feel that provide important lessons and also strategies that other countries or other groups, other peace organizations can learn from. And with that, let me pause here, and then I will be happy to address any questions or provide any additional information. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Wow, this is amazing. It's really fascinating and so important for us to know we're not alone in the world, to see these other folks standing up really with us is incredible. We definitely have some questions for you. So let's see. Yeah, I'll start calling on people. Mark, you're going to be first. We'll let you unmute now. Mark? No? Okay. Let's go. No? Okay. Barbara, go ahead.
Simone, I just find this in some ways so difficult that the US media does not cover any of this. Even the media that is not in the mainstream, if you want to use the term left of center, like a Pacifica. I mean, I'm flawed that we are just so self-centered and negligent in not bringing this information up. Do you have any thoughts?
I think it's not surprising to the extent, also myself, that's the reason why I actually wanted to show the, Korean movement, because I feel, I agree with you. It is not covered by mainstream US media. I think that we all know the reason why, because it's a corporate media that obviously not going to cover this movement. And that's why, precisely the reason why I think a forum like this is important. And I mean, yesterday, I received an email from actually fellow Korean, and he was saying, wow, 661 the Korean groups have mobilized, and he's Korean, but he himself thought that he didn't know, he never heard, heard about it. So yeah, I think it's truly, it's regrettable, but it's understandable. It's a corporate media, and of course, it doesn't serve the U.S. interest to U.S. mainstream media to report this anti-war movement taking place, because it undermines U.S. strategy.
And someone has commented in the chat that this isn't reported in the mainstream Korean media either, which again highlights what we've talked about before, that this is really a struggle of folks in power trying to impose upon the rest of us, and that the people on the ground in all of these countries around the world, we're the ones that are really in this together and have these connections and can learn so much from each other. Moji would like to ask. Go ahead, Moji. I think you should be able to. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. Hi, Simone. Thank you for what you're doing. I am in Boulder, Colorado, and I am your Iranian brother in
Hello.
peace and struggling for peace and democracy. And I'll put in the chat a project that I recently started called the National Peace and Democracy Coalition of Iran, and of which Professor William Woodard in the audience is an advisor. So I would like to invite you and Amy
Thank you.
to join this as non-Iranian either advisors or friends. So I hope both of you would accept this. And I believe what you are, the sentence that jumped at me in your key takeaways was connecting nonviolent resistance to sovereignty, which is what Iran has been, the Iranian peace movement, of which I'm I guess, a representative, has been trying to establish, to get out of that binary that is created, that you are either with us or you are the enemy. In this case, in your case, I am assuming that you folks are being suppressed in South Korea, because if you resist the internal despotism of the Korean vassal state, then you would be immediately called an enemy and an agent of North Korea and stuff like that. And you are a third force, as my understanding is. So please comment about what I said in terms of nonviolence being the antidote to both internal despotism and external colonialism. And Dr. Mossadegh of Iran, overthrown in 1953 in the CIA and MI6 coup, said internal despotism and external colonialism are two sides of the same coin, especially when they perpetuate each other as enemies. So thank you for what you're doing, and please comment. And please accept and look at that website, and I would love to have a Korean peace and sovereignty loving sister as a non-Iranian advisor to this project.
Thank you for the invitation, and also thank you for your comment. And I'll be honored to join your effort. And also, moreover, I think I will be happy to share the work that you're doing with the other Korean organizations and my network about the about your comment. Yes, I think one of you commented that even the material that I presented is not even well covered within Korean mainstream media, which is true. And yes, it is true. If this position, although I said it's a very wide, it's a very powerful, massive, but still it's considered maybe considered against Korean state interest, because as you know, as Korea is U.S. allies, and Korean government is still taking very not a very diplomatic kind of position at this point, because Korea is very hard to saying no to U.S. As a vassal state to United States. So in that sense, any anti-war movement, any movement that is against the U.S. strategy is considered obviously considered against this even Korean state's interest. Although the Koreans, these people who are mobilizing, at the one that I mentioned, mobilizing, specifically wanting for Korea as a true sovereignty. And the biggest, obviously, obstacle they are saying is that, well, we are facing the North Korean threat, so that's why we need to have this U.S. security, with the U.S. security arrangement and alliance. And so I understand, your comment about this Koreans, some of the peace movement, peace organization, and also the centers looked at as enemies of, addressing this to double colonialism issue, imperialism issue. So it makes perfect sense. That's why I think goes along with the other earliest comment that how these views, although it is very grassroots, it's powerful, not really publicized or even being made aware of. But on the other hand, I would say though, I would still point out though, we're talking about, we say when we're 661, 660 organization, this is very grassroots, very deeply, has a long history of struggle, resistance, and they have, of course, they have success and failures, and trial and errors, but these are well entrenched, established groups. So in that sense, this is not just ad hoc. we have learned a lot from previous struggles. And so I think that what we're looking at right now, hopefully this movement, as I can see, is that is leading to helping Korea also to join move away from more US dominated unipolar system to more multipolar world where, you know, I think the world is heading, and the Koreans also can join that path.
I'm actually really impressed with the strength of your civil society that you must have to have all those groups and have them be connected in that way. That's incredibly impressive and seems like a really healthy underpinning that you have there to help with this sort of resistance. I'd like to call on Casey. Casey, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for the talk, and I really enjoy these webinars. The first question I have is um, now I know that Korea. You said that Korea was the seventh largest importer of the weapons, but from my understanding, Korea also does exports on weapons as well.
Mhm.
Okay. And then the second question I have is, how is current president perceived by the activists, so-called the peacemakers? How are they reacting to the current president?
I think there was a little bit, internet was disrupted briefly. About
Mhm.
yes, the Korea is also becoming emerging as one of the world, you know, not the biggest one, but it's important weapons exporter, which obviously very alarming. But again, it's kind of understandable still that it's a vassal state of the United States, and it is, and as Korean corporations being very, it also in itself is developed military industrial complex. So yes, that is factually correct. Not only Korea is one of the biggest, you know, from third to now seventh exporter of U.S. weapons, now is it itself becoming an important world exporter of weapons. The second about the Korean president, I think their internet was disrupted, so I'm not quite sure what exactly the question was about the president.
Yeah, the question is, how is the are we? I mean, is the Korean activists in Korea, how are they reacting to the current president? Are they uh, are they kind of act differently to President Lee versus President Yoon, the previous president, or are they, up in arms about the things happening today, or what's going on there?
Yes, of course. As you know, the progressive groups, we stopped the far right President Yoon's illegal martial law, and we were actually very strongly mobilized against for the for the last 4 years. Now we have more Lee Jae-myung, who is more liberal, more progressive president. The groups that the anti-war group and peace groups were not mentioned, somewhat cautious. They understand. They don't, as you know, it's like when Obama was a president or any other liberal president, when the president, U.S. peace group tend to have a somewhat kind of nuanced position. That's where Korean peace groups are, progressive groups are. Because President Lee Jae-myung has not come up with, when it comes to foreign policy, he has been taking more centrist. He has not been really pursuing progressive policies. He's more still going along with the U.S. In my view, U.S. policy without. So there are a lot of discussions. There are a lot of progress groups already criticizing Lee Jae-myung, but still they don't want to so overtly protest or oppose him because Korea still has very strong presence of right-wing groups who were very mobilized, who were empowered under previous Yoon Suk-yeol. So I think that at this point, that being said, though, I think the president, that is the reason why the progress groups within society must mobilize. They should empower. And that is why this involvement of a progressive, although it's minor parties, progressive parties being involved in this movement, the peace movement, is very important. It's not just enough to have this civic organization. You have to have a presence within National Assembly because they make laws. They have a direct power. So that is why I think this anti-war movement has to have a connection. There's a connection between peace groups, civic organization, and the political parties and leaders. But
on that note, I just wanted to ask you. This is like a kind of personal question.
Yeah.
When the President Lee came to meet President Trump on August 25th, 2025, they were having a conversation, and it sounded like President Lee would give him his liver if he could to President Trump, and it just felt like, how would you say, I mean, I understand that he has to kind of make things yes, that's right, Earl. I mean, he had to kind of work with President Trump, but as a progressive, as an activist, how did you feel about what he was doing, how the conversation went? And I mean, how did you feel about that? I mean, was it like, oh, okay, he had to do what he had to do, or was it more like, God, why did he have to do the way he has to act like that? Like he was like it was like he was acting like a child, asking for some candy or something.
yeah, I would actually, I wouldn't endorse the way that he did. He should have been more assertive, and that's not the, it was disappointing. Actually, I have met Lee Jae-myung personally, and but Lee Jae-myung, that's kind of his, in a way, that his style. What I found Lee Jae-myung is that he's more, somewhat, he's very diplomatic. He knows what he wants, and he will take plenty of time to strategize. I think that's where he is. But when it comes to with regard to foreign policy and U.S.-Korea relationship, and also we haven't even talked about at all in this webinar, the North Korea policy. Lee Jae-myung so far has not been pretty much aligned with U.S. policy. So he has not come up yet with very clear progressive policies, which is it's regrettable. And that is the reason why we need to really pressure not only the government but also to also fundamentally to change the U.S.-Korea relations so that Korea can take a more independent, sovereign approach. But you're right, Lee Jae-myung has not done that yet. So
great. So we are just about at 8 o'clock. That went real fast. And we did not get to all the questions. What I will say is, first of all, just there are some questions about if you might give people access to your slides or otherwise be in touch. So maybe you can let folks know how to do that or if that's possible.
Yes, of course, absolutely, yes.
Okay, so
yeah, maybe I can with email addresses, if you can give me, maybe I can share my slides, or I can even post on our Korea Policy Institute website. Yeah.
I just popped in some links to ways to read more of Simone's work. There's a few places, as I mentioned before, that she contributes to, so those will help you stay in touch. And yeah, and I'll also say that I'm just thrilled that there's so much interest. I completely agree with you that both what's happening on the Korean Peninsula is far more important than you would know from our media, because most people, it's not even on their radar that anything is going on there, particularly other than little bits about North Korea. The larger situation is really not looked at. And also that the people of Korea are just have been incredible activists, so inspiring, doing such good work. And particularly the feminists, the women's movement there, it's so impressive. We have a lot to learn, and we will continue to have programs like this so that we keep this topic and this conversation going for folks, since it's not happening in more mainstream places. So thank you all. I have a few things to announce before we end here. The series is free always, but we absolutely welcome your support. nhpeaceaction.org/donate is how you do that. Also, definitely keep up with us. I'll put in both nhpeaceaction.org and one of the organizations that Simone is involved in, so you can, again, keep up with her work. Do note that tonight's program and most of our Monday night and other programs that we do through Zoom are available on our YouTube channel. So check that out. Watch these things again. Right. So everyone can go and look at the slides there, actually. And send it around. Let other people know about it. Again, we feel incredibly lucky to bring in such amazing people, amazing speakers, and we'd love for these messages to be spread as much as possible. Quick update on a few things coming up. We have vigils for just peace in Palestine and the Middle East continuing. Wednesday, March 25th, 2 to 3 p.m. will be in Dover near Representative Pappas's office. Thursday, March 26th, noon to 1 at City Plaza in Concord. Folks will be there. And Wednesday, April 1st, 2 to 3 p.m. will be at Senator Shaheen's Dover office on Central Ave. I kind of assume most of you know this Saturday, March 28th, noon, well, different times in different places, is the nationwide, probably global, No Kings rally. New Hampshire Peace Action hopes to be in multiple places around the state. For sure, we will have a table at the State House in Concord, New Hampshire, so you can come and say hi. We really urge people to bring messages around peace, around an end to militarism, and particularly to some of the wars that we're currently engaged in. That we know that is a welcome message. It's part of what this particular rally of No Kings is promoting, and we're so glad that that's true, and we want to be a part of it. Monday, March 30th at 4:30 p.m., the film The Settlers about Israel will be held at St. Anselm's College in Manchester with discussion led by Not My Name, New Hampshire after the film. Also, they will be holding a film on Wednesday, April 8th, 7 p.m., The Voice of Hind Rajab at 3S Art Space in Portsmouth. Still has tickets for sure, I'm told. And our next Peace and Justice conversation via Zoom will be Monday, April 6th at 7 p.m. And the topic will be nuclear weapons and your tax dollars, as we'll be nearing tax day in the US. And Dr. Bob Dodge will be joining us to discuss that. So again, please, big thanks to our wonderful speaker tonight. Any visible way you can do here to thank Dr. Simone Chun for joining us and bringing us this incredible information. And thanks to all of you for showing up, for participating. Sorry we didn't get through all the questions, but like I said, we'll keep having these conversations.